All right, so I wanted to show you guys my passion fruit trellis and my pruning that I'm doing right now. So this is a trellis that I have a purple passion fruit. I'll show you that in a minute here, the stem of the plant. But it was sold to me as a possum purple. Whether it is or it isn't, I don't really know. I've got a trellis made out of 10-foot long rebar sections driven about 2 feet into the ground. Half-inch rebar, I think it is, with a 3/4 inch 90, or maybe it's half-inch 90s. Yeah, half-inch 90s. Schedule 40 PVC. There's an 8-foot section of rebar, another 90, and then another 10-foot section driven into the ground. And there's 4 of these about 8 feet apart. So we got about 30, maybe a little more than 8 feet, some of them, but they're probably, it's about a 30-foot long by 8-foot wide trellis. So again, this was sold to me as a possum purple passion fruit. I bought it off of Wellspring Gardens. I think it was a seedling, so that's why I'm a little skeptical. But I planted it late last summer. It is now here in Central Florida, the end of July, 3rd week of July. And it was a little tiny seedling with like 2 leaves on it. And it's been just over a year now. And you can see the size of the base of the vine. It's got like 2 big stems that come off of it. So I again planted it last summer. It grew a little bit. I mean, it grew up to, I gave it some bamboo stakes and a little bit of a trellis here just to reach up, and some side wires. So to get up to the trellis. Now the trellis is strung. You can see these wires here between the rebar sections. There's wire. It's probably like 6 wires strung between each one. So it makes this nice, covers the top of this thing. And the idea is that when the fruit is ready, it just hangs down ripe, and I just pick it up off the ground, which it was very successful. This plant produced probably at least, I don't know, at least 100, more than 100 fruits this year. We ate at least a couple to 3 or 4 passion fruit every day for the last 2.5 or 3 months. We've been eating a lot of passion fruit. My kids absolutely love passion fruit. So do I. But you can see here's a little immature fruit hanging down here. So this is what they do. They hang down and then they fall, and you pick them up off the ground when they're ripe. Really, they just fall when they're ripe and you pick them up. But this thing was completely covered in this entire trellis and hanging down on every edge, hanging over into my neighbor's yard, way down the fence, way off of either end of the trellis. And it was solid all the way across the top of it. It was completely solid. Layers of vines on top of each other. But the way that a passion fruit, it fruits, is that these young shoots like this will form flower buds. Mine's not flowering right now. I mean, there were flower buds on it, but the flowers are falling off. I think it's too hot. But my intent is to prune it back to where I prune it back to like the thick, bigger than my pinky size vines that would sort of act like the cordons, right? Commercial growers, when they grow passion fruit, they train it very deliberately to have a few main branches and then they let new growth come off of the big cordon wood. And that's where the fruit sets. They collect fruit, they prune it back, almost like grapes. It's quite similar. So mine's not really that scientific, but the same principle is going to apply. So if I didn't do this, all that new growth is going to be way out on the ends in my neighbor's yard. It's going to be all over the place. So, and the plant's got to expend that much more energy to get that, um, the flowers and everything. There's just so much vine there. So the intent is to give it a haircut, bring the vine back so it fits on the trellis, bring it back to those thicker vines, and then let it flush back out again. And again, it's the end of July now, so my intent is that I can have it pruned back and then flush in August, maybe start putting some flowers on, hopefully the end of August, and then flower in September and mature fruit into around Thanksgiving, because we should have warm enough temperatures. I think with the shorter day length and the slightly cooler temperatures that we get in September and October, I should be able to get another fruit set, which that's the idea, and to kind of manage the vine, because it's just, these vines are incredibly vigorous. This 8x30 trellis is not, it could easily occupy 3 of trellises. If this trellis was 3 times as long as one vine would eat it up. There's no doubt. So passion fruit vines get gigantic, and this is, again, is a Passiflora edulis is the purple variety. And again, it was sold as a possum purple. I don't know whether it was or it wasn't. It makes a really good fruit. It's real sweet. But I gave it, started this yesterday, and you can see down here, this is wilted down a lot, but this is the cuttings off of it so far. I mean, there's a big heap of vines there. Excuse my leaf bags. I collect leaves in the spring, like 40 or 50 bags from all the neighbors to use as mulch in the gardens, and I just let them cook down in the sun. But again, it's started to prune it back. I want to finish it up now, and then I'll show it to you when it's completely done. And I just wanted to show you real quick with the vines here and the way that I this is like a big bed here that's probably, there used to be some old citrus trees or something in here. It's probably 10 or 12 feet long by 4 or 5 feet wide at the widest. And then there's river landscaping rocks all around it. But I found the roots of this plant way out there, probably 20 feet away by my mulberry tree the other day when I was digging. So the plant is super vigorous. I mean, it really is. And this soil was amended with some good, like, just really rotted, well rotted down wood chips. That was just fungal compost that I amended this whole bed with. I also grew a huge cover crop of sun hemp here last summer. And then I planted the passion fruit into that and then mulched it all in the springtime or in the end of winter. So this big bin here, this is all just leaves right here. So this is the soil, the plant's roots. This big pile of leaves has been sitting here since, April, really March probably. Just people's yard waste, just rotting down here. So the intent there is to, and there's actually drip irrigation here, and there's a dripper underneath this big pile. So this leaf pile can just rot down into that soil and just compost in place and help to feed my passion vines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to prune back, and then I'm going to do a little fertilizing, clean up some of this area a little bit, and I will show you that when I get to it. Okay, so I think I got it where I want it. I probably cut it back by 60, probably 75%. If you count all the stuff, at least 75% of the trellis is now open, but it was going way over the trellis, so maybe more than that. Maybe I cut it back 85, 90% of the foliage off of it. Here's my pile of cuttings. I could root some of these, but I don't want to go through with that. It's too much. I got enough as it is. So again, if I look back here, I've pruned back to mostly bigger vines. You know, a lot of like this size stuff here. I'm sure there's some little ones left, but I got it back, took it in probably 50% of the trellis this way, and took it in on both ends. My intent was to kind of make it, oh, this was about the amount of the trellis it covered in the spring. I planted it the end of last summer. In the spring, like February, it was probably about this big. And then it flushed out a bunch of growth and set a ton of fruit here in the center part of the trellis. So it's kind of my logic there. So I did want to show one thing. This is an experiment I'm doing. So you can see here, here's the base of it. This right here is actually a flavocarpa, an edgeless flavocarpa. This is a yellow passion fruit. I threw a bunch of seeds. There's somebody in my neighborhood that had a huge passion vine, a yellow passion fruit, which yellows are even more vigorous than the purple ones. But it was a big yellow passion fruit, like a yellowish dark green. It wasn't totally yellow, but it was definitely not a purple passion fruit. But there was fruits laying all over the ground. I picked up some fruit, ate it. It was very good. A little more on the sour side, but had more pulp. And I threw the seeds right here. I don't know, about sometime last fall. And this one, along with about a dozen other ones, were growing right here. And this one I picked the best one, and it's finally now poking its way up onto the top. So my intent is to passion fruits, they, like the purple ones, are self-pollinators. And I think the yellow ones, to some extent, some of them can self-pollinate. But if you cross-pollinate, the amount of pulp that's on the inside and the size of the fruit increases significantly. It's not different than many other fruits. The better the pollination, the better quality fruit. So what I'm going to try to do is grow a yellow and this purple on this trellis. And it might become completely unmanageable. It probably is. Maybe the yellow one will never take off, but I would like to try it and see what happens. Because with some management, I might be able to actually have both. And the yellows are supposed to flower pretty much all summer. Even they're a much more tropical variety. So they'll flower and set fruit in the heat, where the purple ones don't seem to do that as well. So I can have both. So I might be able to get, and both will benefit from the pollen of the other. So you'll get better fruit on both of them if they have pollen from another genetically different plant. So, but yeah, like I said, right now, there's the big pile of cuttings. I took it way back. I'm going to take this opportunity to tighten up, clean up some of the trellis wires, and just get them tightened while I have access to them. And then I'm going to scrape back some of this mulch. I'm going to give it a heavy feed of a 526 organic fertilizer, the Spoma Fruit and Citrus Tone. Which, yeah, I think it's a 526. And I'm also going to mix in a 374. It's called Terp Tea. I can't remember, the Roots Organics, I think, is the brand. So 526 and a 374. So it'll be like a 8, 9, 10 fertilizer, theoretically. But it'll be a pretty balanced feed, as well as I'm going to give it some manganese and I'm going to give it some chelated iron. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scrape back some of this mulch so I can get in there, and I'm going to drench all this area with that fertilizer, and then I'm going to pile up some mulch around it, even more than is here now. And then we'll see what happens. But I appreciate it, and like I said, just I think with these passion vines, I can't recommend them enough. They're a lot of fun to grow, and making this passion fruit tunnel was really easy, and it's just been a lot of fun, and the kids absolutely love the fruit, as well as I absolutely love them. I'll eat 3 of them right in a row, and they will get your digestive tract moving if it's not, for sure. A lot of people don't like the texture, but I think the texture is actually really cool. The seeds, the flesh. I've heard some things that the seeds are toxic, and a lot of other things that said no, the seeds aren't toxic. Don't worry about that. So I eat the seeds, but I think it's just such a cool plant, but it is in need of a little bit of a feeding and the pruning. And maybe I'll do an update here in a couple months, and we'll see what's happening with it. All right, thanks.